But I began to realize nothing was moving, dead still. Honestly, it started creeping me out. I lowered my rifle to the ground, climbed down the tree, and up on top of this ridge, I hear something walking. So I stopped, and I hear one, maybe two steps, and it stopped. Start walking again, and the instant I start walking, almost matching my footsteps, I hear something else walk. I hear it again, and I stop again. And I hear one footstep after I stop, and it stopped. After a few times, I'm starting to think, what is this? It's starting to kind of really creep me out. I noticed that it sounds like it's coming off the ridge and kind of angling toward me. I hear something splash in the creek and run up the hill toward me. My uncle had a golden retriever. Well, of course, I wasn't thinking anything about that at this point because I'm being paced out. He jumps out in the road and he's wagging his tail. He gets about halfway to me and he just instantly freezes. And his hair bristles up, ears laid back, and he starts growling. He stood there for a second or two and he instantly turned around and bolted. And when he turned around, whatever this thing was that had followed me out started screaming. When this thing started screaming, it sounded like it was right on me. As soon as it started, natural reaction, I'm turning my head to look, and I can't see anything. Nothing. And this is so loud. You could feel it hitting you in the chest. I could almost feel my hair blowing back. I'd never heard anything that close, that loud. I was more afraid than I ever had been in my life. And that's all I knew.
I'd like to welcome Matt to Bigfoot Crossroads. Not me, a different Matt.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah. How you doing, Matt?
What's going on? Doing good. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, for sure. First off, you've got a fantastic name.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thanks. As well you do.
Very strong name. Very masculine name.
Extremely strong, yeah.
So you emailed me telling me your story, sharing your story with me.
Right.
And, to be honest, I thought your story was a very important one to tell. I know you've got some reservations about sharing it.
Right.
So I do appreciate you coming on to talk about it. If you don't mind, just kind of go through the same story that you told me, what happened and everything with as much or as little detail as you want.
Okay, good deal. Well, this happened in early part of December of 1995. And as I often did, I got off work early and decided I was going to go hunting. Had a tree stand set up on some land, family land. And, it wasn't uncommon if I got off work early, it's what I did. If it happened to be, hunting season. So I got off work early, decided I was, that's what I was going to do. And my stand was on, like I said, on some family land. It was several acres, and it was backed up by just, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of acres, state land. And, I'd hunted back there several times for several years. And for the most part, unless I brought somebody with me, I never saw anybody out there. I mean, nobody. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I got off, drove to my uncle's house. He lived on the property, and parked and got out, got all my gear together, and started walking in the woods. And left his house, walked down a hill, and there's a creek, and you have to cross the creek. And so I crossed the creek and start going up a hill. About halfway up this hill, there's an old logging road, which wasn't really much of a road, more of a path through the woods by this time because it hadn't been used in years. Anyway, this old logging road, it follows this hillside in the creek, and it just, follows back. And my stand was probably, I would guess, probably 3/4 to a mile back in the woods. It was a pretty good walk. Took a while.
Pretty back far away from the house then.
Oh, yeah. You couldn't, no way you could see the house. You could, no lights, could hear anything, just woods. So I walk in, taking my time, walking slow, just looking around, enjoying being out in the woods, which is really the main reason I hunted. I was the kind of hunter that, I just like being in the woods. It didn't matter if I took anything or not. That's what I like. Anyway, I walk in and finally make it to my stand, climb up in the tree, pull my rifle up, and I sit there. And usually 15 or 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, before things would start moving. And I mean, usually the woods would just come alive. It was, and so I sit there. I don't really know how long I sat there, but I began to realize nothing was moving. I mean, it dead still. And started actually, honestly, started creeping me out. And I, just felt really strange. I'd sat there for, quite a while, and it was just dead still, no noise, no nothing. So I sat there for a while and started getting creeped out and decided, it's not my day to be out here. So I lowered my rifle to the ground, climbed down a tree, kind of looked around a little bit, didn't see anything, nothing moving. So I started walking out. Well, my stand was probably about 10, 20 yards from the old log road. So I'm walking, began to walk out. Now on my way out, creek would be to my left and the ridge of this hill would be to my right. So I start walking, and I hadn't walked maybe 10 yards at the most. And up on top of this ridge, I hear someone walking. So I stop. Well, I stopped, and I hear one, maybe two steps, and it stopped. So I'm looking, trying to see something moving or, and nothing. My first thought went, there's a deer up on the ridge, and I startled it, and,
yeah.
But, I see nothing. So I stand there probably, I don't know, a minute or so looking, didn't see anything. So I start walking again. Well, the instant I start walking, I hear footsteps up on top, sounded like on top of this ridge. And this ridge probably would have been 25 yards, probably maybe 30 at the most to my right. And the hillside on the way up, very little trees. It's not, they had logged it at one point and logged it down probably, I don't know, 10 yards from the creek. So, where they had logged whenever that was, still didn't have many trees on it. So I could see pretty much the whole hillside.
And this is early December, you said. I guess most of the leaves were off the trees and everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was, there were leaves on the ground, that kind of thing. So what I was hearing crunching in leaves, and it was pretty dry. So I could hear it. And I didn't have any problem hearing it. Whatever I was hearing sounded pretty large. So anyway, I'm start walking again, and the instant I start walking, almost matching my footsteps, I hear something else walk. I hear it again. So I walk maybe 10 yards, and I stop again, and I hear one footstep after I stop, and it stopped. And I'm thinking, okay, this doesn't sound like a deer. It sounds way too heavy for a deer. And whatever I'm hearing sounds like it's walking on two legs. So I'm looking, I said, I don't see anything. Well, it's beginning to creep me out again. And something's following me out here. So now let me add, I have seen in those woods several coyote, several bobcat. There was a lot of them out there. And, coyotes have been known to follow people.
Right.
And so, my mind goes there, and I think, what I'm hearing is too big. You can tell, coyote,
right,
not making a whole lot of noise. You can still hear them, but whatever I was hearing sounded to be a whole lot larger than that.
And it was going in the same direction as you, like paralleling you up on the ridge?
Oh, yeah. Right. It was paralleling me. All right. Yeah. So I began to walk again. And once again, the instant I start walking, I hear footsteps. So I walk, and while I'm walking, I'm looking. I'm looking up the hill, looking on the whole hillside, looking on the ridge, and I don't see anything. No movement whatsoever. I walk probably, 30 yards maybe this time, and I stop again. Same thing. Hear one footstep, and it stopped. And, you know, after a few times, I'm starting to think, you know, what is this? You know, it's starting to kind of really creep me out.
Yeah.
And when I'm, you know, so I start scanning the hill, start looking on the, you know, the ridge, and still, I can see nothing. So I stand there maybe a couple of minutes and, you know, still nothing. So I start walking again. Anyway, you know, this happened pretty much all the way out. And like I say, it was you know, it was at least 3/4 of a mile back there. So, you know, walking, stopping, it's going to take a little while.
I know it was a long time ago, but do you remember whenever that was going on, do you remember hearing any other wildlife like birds or squirrels alerting or anything like that?
Oh, no. It was still dead still. I mean, nothing.
Yeah, that'd be creepy.
Which is really unusual, because even like on the walk in and out, I would see squirrels, birds, whatever. But I mean, nothing. And I could, you know, when I was stopping, it would stop. I didn't hear anything, dead silence.
And still pretty good daylight out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was, yeah. I want to guess probably by the time I started walking, that was maybe 4:00 in the afternoon.
Okay.
That's a guess, because I really don't remember, but it was late afternoon, but it was still a good ways from, you know, getting dark. So, you know, I start walking again, and, you know, every time I walk, I'm hearing this thing. Well, after a few times of stopping and starting and hearing this thing, I noticed that it sounds like it's coming off the ridge and kind of angling toward me. So, you know, at one point I stop, and when I hear it sounds like as I'm walking, it's about halfway between me and the ridge now, which would put it 15 yards from me, maybe 20 yards at the very most.
Pretty close.
It was close. Yeah. I mean, I could, from the sound of it anyway, you know, like I say, and I see nothing. And there's very few, like I say, there's very few trees on this hillside. So anyway, I keep walking, stopping, and every time, same thing. One, maybe 2 steps. A couple times I think I heard 2 steps, and it stopped. Now, I have no idea how many times I stopped, but, you know, several times, because, you know, on the way out. Well, I finally got to where I could make out through the trees to my right. And, you know, it drops off to the creek, and it starts going back up a hill. And my uncle's house was on the side of another hill on the other side of the creek. And I finally get to where I could see his house, you know, little glimpses of it through the trees on the other side. I could see his house. It wasn't that far from his house. And I stopped. And, you know, mind you, every time this thing, whatever it was, sounds like it's kind of, you know, getting closer to me, just slowly angling toward me off the hill. So anyway, I get to where I can see his house a little bit through the trees, and stop again, you know, same thing, a couple steps, and I start walking again. Well, this time I walked probably pretty good ways, and I stopped. And again, it stopped. Well, this time, now I could see my uncle's house through the trees pretty good by this point. To my left, I hear something splash in the creek and run up the hill toward me. Well, of course, I freak out, you know, you know, and so I raised my rifle and pointed to whatever this was running up the hill, and still trying to, you know, I'm looking that way and still trying to look, you know, back to the right to see if I could see whatever this other thing was. Well, probably about 10 yards in front of me on this little, what used to be a log road, my uncle had a golden retriever, and he would often meet me coming out of the woods. Well, that's what it was. That's what I heard splash in the creek and come running up the hill. It always amazed me, because I never understood, you know, how does he know I'm here? You know, because, you know, I'm walking quiet, but this dog would almost every time, you know, meet me. Well, of course, I wasn't thinking anything about that at this point, because I'm being paced out. So anyway, he jumps out in the road, and he's wagging his tail, and he comes kind of trotting up to me, wagging his tail. He gets about halfway to me, and he just instantly freezes, and his hair bristles up, ears laid back, and he starts growling. And he stood there for a second or two, and he instantly turned around and bolted back to the house. And when he turned around, whatever this thing was that had followed me out started screaming. And
take your time, man. Take your time.
Yeah. When I hadn't talked about this in a long time. When this thing started screaming, it sounded like it was right on me. Not, and again, as soon as it started, natural reaction, I'm turning my head to look. And I can't see anything, nothing. And this is so loud that I could feel it. It's almost like you could feel it hitting you in the chest. I think I mentioned this in the email, and this may sound weird, but it was almost like I could feel my hair. I had pretty long hair back then. I could almost feel my hair blowing back. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it probably wasn't. But
just that loud.
Unbelievable. I'd never heard anything that close, that loud, as far as being in the woods.
Whenever it let out that scream, what were you thinking? Could you even process what was happening?
No. The only thing I knew, I was probably more afraid than I have ever in guys ain't supposed to say things like that. Big, strong hunter guy,
Sure.
I'm not supposed to say things like that, but I was probably more afraid probably to it. I was more afraid than I ever had been in my life. And that's all I knew.
I mean, you're armed, but you don't see anything.
No. And I'm looking to where I'm looking where the sound's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really no doubt where it was coming from. And it could not have been more than 15 yards from me. And I saw absolutely nothing. No movement, no nothing. And I can't move. I'm froze. And I'm standing there with a 270 in my hand. Never once thought, I shouldered it when the dog came running up the hill to me. But it never once entered my mind, to raise my rifle toward it. It just wasn't there. Rifle might as well not even been there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I have no idea how long I stood there. It seemed like an eternity to me. But I was froze, couldn't move. Tried to move my feet, couldn't move my arms, nothing. I was just froze. Like I said, I have no idea how long I stood there, and this scream just kept going. I don't remember it stopping. It just kept going. Finally, I got one foot. It sounds crazy, I know. I got a foot to move, and I thought, okay, I can get out of here. So I knew not to run.
Yeah.
I knew from a kid, if there's a predator and you take off running, it's gonna make the predator instinct in this animal give chase, and they're gonna chase you. So I knew not to run. I wanted to. Anyway, so I started walking, and best I could tell, when I first started, whatever this was screaming, and it's still screaming. Sorry.
No need to apologize, man. This is a lot.
I start walking, and I'm still looking. I'm not looking where I'm going. I'm looking where this thing's screaming from. And, still, there's nothing there. Nothing. So anyway, I managed to make it to the creek, and it's still screaming at me. Now, the creek's not that far from where this happened. Maybe another 10, 15 yards to my left. So I'm not that far from it. And it's not a very big creek. It's probably, 6 foot wide and maybe a foot deep at the most. But where I usually cross, they're, ankle deep at the most. Anyway, so I get to the creek and I start to cross it, but this thing's still screaming. The second my foot hit the other side of the creek, it stopped. Dead silence. I didn't hear anything walking off. Didn't hear nothing. Just dead silent. And it stopped. Well, I kind of turned around. I'm still walking, but I kind of turned around and looked. Still see nothing. See no movement, no anything. And finally make my way back to my truck and pack up and I leave. There was a guy that hunted with me a lot and actually hunted with me back there quite a bit. So I got home, of course, back then didn't have cell phones or anything. I got home, I called him and I told him what happened. And he, laughed at me. A coyote followed you out of the woods and screamed at you. And, well, of course, I put it away after that because I know there's no way what I heard was a coyote.
Yeah.
I know, like I had seen several bobcats back there before and pretty large ones, but there's no way a cat did that. It may have stopped from the time it started to the time I crossed the creek, and I honestly don't have any idea how long that was. It may have stopped, but if it did, I don't remember it. I mean, it was to me, it was just like one continuous, long, loud scream. And when I say scream, it's what it sounded like. I mean, it wasn't a roar. It wasn't, a growl. It was a scream.
Like a person.
At the very start of it, it's exactly what it sounded like. It almost sounded like, and I know when I say this, but people are going to think, well, that's a cat, because cats can sound like a woman screaming, but I assure you this was no cat. But when it first started, that's the first thing that popped in my head it sounded like a woman screaming, but it just got louder and deeper. It was no cat. There's no way. Anyway, that's the short of it, I guess. But I that's the only. I told you when I got home, I called my buddy that I hunted with and told him, and he kind of laughed. You coyote followed you out of the woods. Well, so I just put it away. And a few years ago, I discovered podcast and started listening to some Bigfoot Sasquatch podcast, and kind of brought it back to mind. And I don't know that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say, I didn't see anything, and honestly, I'm glad I didn't see it. Anything that sound like that, I don't want to see.
Did you ever return to that location?
I did a few times. I never went back alone. My buddy that I called and told about it, him and I went back there a few times. Never went back as far as my stand. To my knowledge, it's probably still there because I never went back and got it. What's left of it is probably still there, I should say. I never went back and got it.
Never any more incidents after that or anything?
Not as far as that goes, no. Now I did at one point, my wife and my daughter and I went camping out there. Now, when I say out there, it was just on the very edge of this property, right there at the creek, and where we were, you could see my uncle's house. You could also see another house across the creek, but I was a little bit nervous, to say the least, but nothing happened.
Yeah.
It was, what's really odd to me is, like I said, we had hunted, myself and my buddy and me alone. I used to hunt that a lot, and nothing like that ever happened. So, that really didn't make a whole lot of sense to me either.
And obviously your uncle and nobody ever mentioned anything.
No. And I asked him if he had ever heard anything or seen anything strange, and of course he said no. If he had, he didn't tell me.
Yeah.
Now, I did not see this, but you asked if, any other incidents since that happened to me. There was a couple of things that happened to some other people. They didn't see nothing like that, but they saw lights. Across the road from where this property starts, there was a house, and the guy, and again, I did not see this, so this is secondhand.
Right.
But the guy woke up one night and there was a ball of light in his front yard. And now he had a huge yard, and it was surrounded by a pasture. The guy had horses, and he had, just a big pasture. And he woke up in the middle of the night and saw this ball of light in his front yard. So he called the police, and they came out there, and this was probably maybe a month or two after that happened to me. Police showed up. It was one guy, and he pulled up in the driveway, and it was still there. It hadn't moved. And he called for backup. Well, another police showed up, and they got out, started walking toward it. And when they did, it started kind of floating off in the pasture. They walked to the pasture fence and stood there and watched it, and it went across the pasture back to the woods and disappeared in the woods.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, I didn't see that.
Right.
But the police officer that happened to, he actually told me about it. So, and he had no reason to lie about it. And I never mentioned anything about what happened to me or anything else out there. But
yeah,
there was some other strange things happened on that property and at my uncle's house. And actually where I worked was on that property, but was on the very edge of that property. And there was some strange things happened in the building that I worked.
Like haunting type stuff?
Yeah. And, yeah. Yeah. Things flying off the shelf, equipment being turned on when nobody's around it, lights turning off and on, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That stuff never bothered me. I mean, that's kind of happened in and around me for, a pretty good while, better part of my life.
Yeah.
And that never really bothered me. It's interested me, and never really, there was one time that I was there working at night. I was there by myself, and it was pretty late. I don't know, midnight or so, we'll say. And I'm sitting there working, and it's, got music playing, and something just pounded on the back door. Now, the back of this building where I worked was woods. It's like I say, it was on the edge of the property where this other happened. And something just pounded on the back door. I mean, pounded. It sounded like the door was coming off hinges.
That's pretty interesting.
And this was after the scream.
Huh.
Yeah. I don't really remember how long after. It wasn't very long afterwards, but it was a little bit after. But I got up and walked out, and nothing was there. Guess that sounds pretty dumb. Something pounding on your back door, and you're going to get up and go open the door in the middle of the night and see what's there. Yeah, that's what I did.
So you mentioned that your wife had experienced some things.
Yeah. She has seen shadow figures in our house. I haven't seen it. She has, and she doesn't really believe in a lot of that stuff. But
she's seen the shadow figures, but she's just out on the whole Bigfoot thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she thinks I'm nuts.
Any idea, why is that? Why are some people willing to, just blindly accept certain things, but then whenever it comes to Bigfoot, they're just, no, there's no way.
I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know. It's it's a mystery to me. I mentioned the scream. A while back, I got online, thought, well, I'm going to see if I can't find anything that sounds like it. And I really couldn't find anything that sounded like what I heard. I heard, and I went back and tried to find it again, and I couldn't. And I should have bookmarked it or something, but I didn't. I did find something at one point that sounded similar.
Do you remember what it was? Like what it was a recording of? Or was it just unknown?
Well, it was a recording of something unknown.
Okay.
And I don't remember, where it was from or, where I found it. I should, like I said, I should have bookmarked it, and I didn't.
Part of the reason that I think your story is so important, it's not so much there. We talked a little bit about this before we started recording. You had mentioned, and we won't go into any names or anything, but you had mentioned that you had reached out to a couple of other podcasts, and people didn't have a very warm reception of your story.
No. The ones that I only had one answer an email. The other ones, I never heard anything back. One of them, I think I emailed a couple of times. But it was like, okay, this doesn't fit. This don't fit our box. So,
right.
You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
I mean, because, a lot of it is, well, this guy didn't really see anything, but to me, that's kind of the point, is you should have seen something.
I should have seen something as close as it was. I saw no movement, no nothing. I've heard, different people's story about they saw a Bigfoot cloak or, whatever. I don't know what I think about that. I have no idea what I think about that. Don't know what to think about that.
Right.
Not saying that I don't believe it. Who's to say? But, when they say that, they mention something like things being pixelated, they could see movement, but it was more of a pixelation they were seeing. And I saw nothing. Absolutely nothing.
No leaves moving, nothing.
Nope. Not a thing. You see, that's the part where when I get to that point, I'm told, well, here's why that can't happen. Well, okay, that might be why it can't happen, but I promise you it happened. I'm not, why would I make this up?
I mean, just hearing the story, it obviously happened. Hearing the emotion in your voice as you're reliving those events, it obviously happened. And God bless that golden retriever. The golden retriever at least sensed whatever was there as well. So you do kind of have a witness.
I think back on that, when I first saw the dog, it was a very much relief. I was so relieved to see that dog when I finally figured out, it was the dog coming.
Yeah.
But when that thing took off, I almost got mad at him. You're going to leave me out? You're going to leave me out here like that,
Thanks a lot, man's best friend.
Yeah, it might be my uncle's best friend, but you're obviously not mine, right?
Yeah. But I mean, even the dog's reaction.
Oh, yeah.
The bristling of the hair and the growling and everything.
Yeah. When he stopped, whatever this was, there was no sound. There was no footsteps. There was nothing. No sound, and I couldn't see it. Maybe he could. I don't know.
Did he look towards where you thought it was at?
Oh, yeah, he did. Yes. He was looking dead at it. When he stopped and froze, his head instantly turned and was looking.
And from where you were standing, just kind of following the angle of where he was looking, I mean, it's not up on the ridge. It's down low by you at this point.
It's down. Yeah, he looked like he was looking, just to my right.
Mm-hmm. Right there.
No, I couldn't tell you, an angle or, whatever, but.
I'm just saying he wasn't looking off in the distance.
Oh, no. He was not looking very far to my right, but he was definitely looking. He was like, honed in on it.
And didn't want nothing to do with whatever it was.
He didn't want a part of it. And he, growled, showed teeth for a second or two and tucked his tail and got out of there. A lot faster than he came up there. Yeah.
So, after all these years, what conclusion have you reached? I know you started listening to Bigfoot podcast, but was that because of this event? Did you ever reach a conclusion that might have been what it was?
At some point, yeah. And honestly, I'm sure that's why I started listening. And at the time, when it happened, that wasn't even on my radar.
Mm-hmm.
I'd heard about it and all this kind of stuff. Of course, everybody has, but I didn't.
Sure.
It just something I never thought of. And when it happened, I didn't think of that. All I knew, whatever this thing was, I didn't want no part of it.
So where are you at now with all of it? Are you comfortable going out into the woods or?
No. Well, I don't hunt anymore. I quit hunting.
Because of that event?
Yeah. I hate to say it too, because, like I say, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I would, go sit in my stand for, till it got dark. I'm usually walking out in the dark with a flashlight. And, wasn't so much, I just liked being out there, loved it. It didn't matter to me if I took anything or not. I just liked being out there.
Yeah, that saddens me to hear it. But you certainly aren't the only hunter that's ever happened to, or outdoors person, or hiker, or anything. I mean, it's a shame. But that's your own thing to deal with, and you got to deal with it how you can.
Yeah. About a year or so ago, my wife and I went to this place that they have cabins. It's out in the woods, and they have cabins and hiking trails and this, that, and other. So we went for the weekend, and we're doing the hiking trails and walking through the woods and all this stuff. And the whole time, that's in my mind, and I'm listening. Yeah. I never told her that. She didn't know, but the whole time, I'm on guard for that.
I don't know if it would help at all, but just something to point out. I mean, if this thing had wanted to harm you, it could have.
I've definitely thought about that. It could have got me any point it wanted to. There's no doubt in my mind. Whatever it was, like I say, I won't sit here and say it, I won't make an attempt at what it was, because I have no idea.
Right.
No idea. But I have heard similar stories of people being paced out of the woods, very similar to this. I actually heard one last night, and I think it was on your show.
Yeah, I've talked to several people. I've definitely been in situations where, we were paced out. I can't tell you the number of people that did exactly what you did, where they would stop walking, hear the one or two steps afterwards,
right,
dead quiet, start again, and then it would start back up again.
Right. The difference being, and this, I won't say it doesn't bother me, because it does, but the difference being, I don't know that I've ever heard another one where they, nothing was seen.
Well, I know somebody.
Okay, good.
I know somebody. As a matter of fact,
good.
I do know somebody.
Good.
And this thing, the similarities are pretty uncanny. Very similar type situation. He was hiking instead of hunting,
mm-hmm.
and this thing was pacing him. He should have seen it, but he couldn't. I think he may have written it off as possibly just the cover that it was in was too thick for him to see it, but he struggled with that. I know him personally. He's one of my friends, and he struggled with that a lot, because he still thinks even with the cover, he should have been able to see it.
Should have seen movement at least.
Yeah, and it was another situation where all this was going on, and then he crossed a creek, and it stopped immediately once he got on the other side of the creek. No, not at all.
You got to be kidding.
So in both,
that's crazy.
Both of those scenarios, I think whatever it was, again, nothing was seen, so we don't know. But whatever it was, I think just wanted to move you out of its area, and it marked that creek as its territory, and on the other side of the creek belonged to your uncle or whoever, and it just wanted you out of there.
That makes sense. Well, I'm glad to know that. It makes me feel a little bit better. And I gotta say, saying this out loud to somebody else that actually doesn't think I'm nuts, helps immensely.
You're not nuts at all.
Even after all this time.
I don't think anybody listening, to your story and hearing you tell it will think you're nuts.
Well,
I don't think so at all.
It's definitely a relief to.
Well, good.
Vocalize it like this, yeah.
Good. I mean, it helps me to hear stories from people just, because of my own experiences and dealing with them. And,
right.
I've got a wife too who, well, I believe you saw something, or you believe you saw something, but that's as far as she'll go with it. And that's my wife that knows me better than anybody,
right.
But, other people listening,
right.
If somebody's experienced something, I hope it helps them. And the fact of the matter is, some of the most traumatizing and scary things we deal with are things that we never actually see. That doesn't mean it didn't happen or there wasn't anything there.
Yeah. I've heard, like I said, I've listened to a lot of shows, a lot of podcasts, and a lot of questions. One question that's asked, I've heard asked a lot. If somebody that's seen something, do you want to see one? Do you want to see one again?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I didn't see what it was, that screamed at me, and I didn't want to see that. No way I want to see it.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine somebody seeing one and wanting to see another one. No, that's just me. But
there's a lot of people that go looking for these things, and every once in a while, one of those people sees one and never goes back.
At one point, not too long ago, I thought, because I actually know somebody, not personally, but I have talked to, that does that. And I thought, maybe that would help. But I don't know.
I mean, I would suggest, don't let it take away something you love forever.
Yeah.
Even if it's just taking baby steps, going to a park, always going with somebody, do whatever you can to get back out there at a level that you're comfortable at going to.
Yeah. No, we'll see. But, I said I don't hunt anymore. That's not to say, like I said, we went camping out there one time like that. And again, it was on the very edge of this property, right on that creek, on the side of the creek where it stopped.
Yeah.
And, we went to that place and hiking through the woods and, that kind of thing. So it's not like I'm not in the woods at all.
Is the feeling the same that it used to be? I mean, do you get out there in nature and feel relaxed, or are you on guard the whole time?
I'm not as relaxed as I used to be. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm definitely, it's in my mind. It's there.
If you had something to say to somebody else who is listening that had an experience like this, what would you tell them?
You're not crazy. Regardless of what somebody says, what happened to you. Talk about it. Don't keep it in. Just because one person may laugh at you or tell you you're nuts, don't hold it in. It helps to talk about it. And there's other people out there that's had, like I just found out because as I said, I'd never heard anybody have a story exactly like this. And, then you say, well, this happened to a buddy of mine, very similar, even as far as crossing the creek and it stopping. So, that tells me, there's always somebody out there that's had something extremely similar happen to them as what's happened to you. You're not alone.
And even if they haven't experienced the same experience, they might have experienced the same emotions,
Exactly. Right.
And that's what a lot of this is about. It's about the experience, the encounter the person has. They were the one that was there, not you.
Right.
So
right. Yeah.
That's how I approach it, at least.
So that's what kind of bothered me. And I'm not using any names, But one guy in particular that I contacted that did answer me back, he began to tell me how this could not happen. And I'm like, dude, you weren't there. You don't have a clue what could happen or what couldn't happen. Don't tell me, that can't happen because it happened.
I mean, in my experience, I can't speak on behalf of everybody, but in my opinion, at least, that's usually whenever you're telling somebody something that challenges what they want to believe, and it puts them in a state of fear and unknowing, and they don't want to accept that. Nobody wants to believe that there's an invisible monster out in the woods.
That's very true.
We can wrap our head around, a big hairy, primate of some kind that just is misunderstood, but something that's invisible, well, how do we conquer that as a human race? How that doesn't put us at the top of the food chain anymore.
That's fact. But I don't know. You use the word invisible. I don't know that I would go as far as saying it was invisible.
Right.
But it makes sense because I couldn't see anything, and it was definitely something there. I mean, I could feel it when it went.
I mean, I won't begin to speculate the how, or why you weren't able to see it, because I don't know. Nobody knows.
Maybe it was invisible. I don't know.
Was it invisible? Was it able to do something to your mind to just make you think you couldn't see it?
This may sound crazy, but I never really thought, hey, this thing was invisible.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it was invisible. That may sound weird because I couldn't see it, but I mean, I know I couldn't see it, but it never really, I don't know. I never used that word to process it, which may sound strange.
Not really, because things aren't invisible, so.
That's true. That's true.
I mean, like, as you were telling your story, there are some things that even I can relate to. And one of the main points is your mind trying to process what you're experiencing and trying to figure out what it is.
Yeah.
And trying to insert, the round peg in the square hole over and over again. Is it a coyote, a bobcat, a mountain lion? Is it another person out here? What is happening? And none of them fit. And whenever none of those things fit in that endless Rolodex in our head, it's hard to process, man. It's,
Yeah. I will say this, and I just thought of this. There was, I was talking to a guy, this has been a couple of years ago, probably, maybe longer than that. I was talking to a guy that his parents used to live in that area, and he did too as well, when he was a kid. And he just out of the blue, and I never mentioned, and I still didn't, anything about what happened to me. But he did mention that they would hear like howls and screams in the woods at night.
Huh.
And I just thought about that. Yeah. But, that's as far as that conversation went. I never said anything about what happened to me, and he didn't really elaborate anything other than that. But that was probably, I think where they lived was maybe been a mile and a half from where that happened. Or from the edge of that property.
I mean, I would consider that a puzzle piece for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
And that just occurred to me.
And you said the property backed up to state land.
Oh yeah, it was just hundreds and thousands of acres of nothing but woods, nothing. It's a very rural area. Small town here, 20 miles down the road. There's another small town.
I mean, we kind of talked about what information you were comfortable with before we recorded, and I'll just say this much. This did happen in Alabama.
Yes.
And I am friends with a lot of people that have told me a lot of Bigfoot stories from Alabama.
Really?
Yeah, it's a pretty, in the South, it's well known for its Bigfoot activity. And a lot of it's some pretty strange stuff, too. Yeah, your story. Don't think you're crazy.
Well, I appreciate that.
I really, like I said, I appreciate you reaching out to me for one and sharing it, because I know that's hard to do. And then to come on the show, like it takes a lot, man. It takes a lot, and I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. And, like I said, I had pretty much given up on, after reaching out to 2 or 3 different people, and one contacted me back and telling me what he did. And I'd pretty much given up on, I'm saying, talking about it. And I don't know, I found your podcast a couple weeks ago, I guess, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and really like it and listened to it quite a bit, actually. And I don't know, just, I thought, well, I'll shoot this guy an email and see what happens.
Yeah, if nothing else, he has a cool name.
That's a fact. You know it. Oh, yeah.
All right, Matt. Well, thanks again for coming on and sharing your story. I appreciate it, and I'm sure the listeners do as well.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
And if you've had an encounter with something you can't explain, send me an email at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check out the website, bigfootcrossroads.com. You can find links to social media, a contact form to reach me directly, links to merchandise, and past episodes all in one place. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.